New developments in a deadly domestic dispute in Birmingham. Police have just identified the man they say was hit and pinned against a house by the mother of his children.
This all unfolding during a birthday and Easter celebration last night. ABC 3340's Gracie Johnson joins us live with the latest.
Easter Sunday, 2025. Birmingham, Alabama. A day meant for celebration. Colorful eggs hidden in fresh spring grass. Children's laughter filling the air, and families gather to share meals and memories. For Mickese James Bostic, it was doubly special. Not only was it Easter, but also his daughter's birthday. The 27-year-old father had transformed his home into a festive haven, with decorations brightening every corner and the aroma of holiday food wafting through the air. Friends and family arrived throughout the afternoon, gifts in hand, ready to create joyful memories. No one could have predicted that within hours, this scene of happiness would become a crime scene. No one imagined that this father of three would take his last breath pinned between a car and his own home. And certainly no one expected that the mother of his children would be the one behind the wheel. But perhaps most shocking of all was what happened days later in a Jefferson County courtroom. As Shatice Jackson stood before the judge, charged with capital murder for deliberately running over her children's father, something unexpected happened. While most defendants appear solemn, frightened, or at least appropriately serious when facing such grave charges, Jackson's demeanor told a different story. She smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a fleeting expression quickly replaced by gravity. Witnesses described it as a confident, almost dismissive expression. One so jarring that it left court officials momentarily stunned and family members of the victim in disbelief. What transforms a family celebration into a murder scene? What happens in a relationship that ends with one parent dead and another seemingly unmoved by their own actions? And perhaps most disturbingly, what makes someone smile when charged with killing the father of their children? Before we continue with this troubling case, I want to welcome you to Crime Scene Exposed, where we investigate the most infamous crimes, baffling disappearances, and twisted criminal minds from around the world. If you're fascinated by the truth behind shocking cases like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of true crime enthusiasts. Now, let's discover what could make a mother smile after being charged with murdering her children's father. The story of Mickese Bostic's death isn't just about a holiday turned tragic. It's about domestic violence that escalated to its deadliest conclusion. It's about children who witnessed horror no child should ever see. And it's about a system that perhaps missed crucial warning signs until it was too late. As we examine what happened that Easter Sunday, and in the courtroom afterward, we'll also look at the red flags that might have predicted this violence, signs that might help others recognize danger before it turns deadly.
Investigators say 27-year-old Mickese James Bostic died after being hit, but an autopsy will determine his exact cause of death. Now, I'm told an argument between Bostic and his children's mother escalated to the point where a gun was involved and eventually led to his death.
One of the few good men left. That's how Brenda Frazier described her nephew, Mickese James Bostic. At just 27 years old, Mickese had already established himself as someone his family, friends, and community could count on. For nearly a decade, Mickese worked for Jefferson County, most recently in the juvenile court system. His colleagues knew him as reliable and committed, someone who showed up not just physically, but mentally and emotionally invested in his work. In a system often overwhelmed with cases and challenges, Mickese was a steady presence, approaching each day with the same dedication. But it was at home where Mickese truly shined. A father of three children with Shatice Jackson, he didn't stop there. He also raised two of Jackson's children as his own, stepping into a father figure role without hesitation. 5 children looked to him for guidance, protection, and love, and by all accounts, he delivered. He never shied away from hard work, his aunt continued in a statement to local media after his death. Whatever needed to be done for his family, Mickese did it. In an era where absent fathers make headlines, Mickese represented something different, a young man fully embracing responsibility. On weekends, neighbors would see him in the yard with the children, organizing games or teaching them to ride bikes. During the week, he balanced his county job with school events and doctor appointments. His home became a hub for family gatherings like the Easter celebration that would tragically become his last. Mickese's commitment extended beyond his immediate family. Friends describe how he would show up to help move furniture, repair a car, or simply provide company during difficult times. He was the person you called when you needed someone reliable, one friend stated. And he always answered. His work in the juvenile court system revealed another dimension of his character. Colleagues noted how he approached troubled youth with a unique blend of firmness and compassion, perhaps informed by his own experience as a father. He understood that behind every case file was a real child, often struggling with circumstances beyond their control. What makes Mickese's story particularly heartbreaking is the contrast between how he lived and how he died. A man who dedicated himself to creating stability for his children would lose his life during what should have been a joyful family celebration, with those same children nearby. Those who knew the family dynamics had observed tensions between Mickese and Shatice over the years. Their relationship had its complications, as many do, but few could have predicted how catastrophically it would end. While Mickese worked to build a secure foundation for their children, underlying issues simmered beneath the surface. As Easter Sunday 2025 approached, Mickese focused on creating a special day that would celebrate both the holiday and his daughter's birthday. He sent invitations, planned activities, and prepared their home for guests. In text messages to family members the day before, he expressed excitement about bringing everyone together. He couldn't have known that the gathering he so carefully planned would become the setting for his final moments, or that the mother of his children would transform from co-parent to alleged killer in the space of one terrible argument. April 20th, 2025. Easter Sunday in Birmingham, Alabama. The morning broke with perfect spring weather, clear skies, and mild temperatures ideal for an outdoor celebration. At Mickese Bostic's home, preparations had begun early. Colorful Easter decorations adorned the living room, while birthday streamers and balloons added to the festive atmosphere. It was to be a double celebration, Easter and his daughter's birthday. By early afternoon, guests began to arrive. Family members brought covered dishes and birthday presents. Children dressed in their Easter best ran through the yard, hunting for hidden eggs, while adults gathered on the porch and in the kitchen, catching up on family news. Mickese moved through the crowd, the consummate host, making sure everyone had food and drinks, introducing relatives who hadn't seen each other in a while. Shatice Jackson arrived with some of the children around 2 p.m. Witnesses would later recall that she seemed tense from the moment she stepped through the door, but many dismissed it as the stress of wrangling excited children on a holiday. She spoke little, keeping to herself while Mickese continued hosting duties. As the afternoon progressed, the celebration was in full swing. Children played games in the backyard. A birthday cake waited on the kitchen counter. Family photos were taken on the front porch. To casual observers, it appeared to be nothing more than a joyful family gathering. The first sign of trouble came around 4:30 p.m. Mickese and Jackson were seen having an intense conversation in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but their body language, rigid postures, Jackson's crossed arms, Mickese's concerned expression, suggested conflict. A relative approached to ask about cutting the birthday cake, and the conversation abruptly ended. 30 minutes later, the situation escalated dramatically. Jackson and Mickese moved their discussion to a bedroom, away from guests. What began as a hushed disagreement quickly grew louder. Guests in the living room exchanged uncomfortable glances as raised voices carried through the closed door. Then came the sound that transformed family celebration into a crime scene, a gunshot from inside the bedroom. Panic erupted. Parents grabbed their children. Some guests fled the house entirely. Others froze, uncertain of what was happening or what to do next. Through the chaos, the bedroom door flew open, and Jackson emerged, firearm in hand. Mickese followed, apparently uninjured by the gunshot, which had been fired into the ceiling. "Everyone needs to leave," Mickese announced, his voice strained but controlled. "The party's over." As guests hurriedly gathered belongings and children, the argument between Mickese and Jackson continued, spilling out onto the front porch and then the driveway. Their words became increasingly heated, their gestures more animated. Several of their children watched from the front door, confusion and fear evident on their faces. What happened next occurred with horrifying speed. As Mickese stood in the yard, likely trying to manage the situation and calm the panicked guests, Jackson made a decision that would forever alter multiple lives. She walked to her vehicle parked on the street in front of the house. Instead of driving away to cool down, she turned the car toward the yard where Mickese stood. Witnesses would later describe the chilling moment when Jackson's expression changed. One family member told police her face showed cold determination as she put the car in drive. There was no hesitation as she pressed the accelerator, sending the vehicle lurching forward directly toward Mickese. The car jumped the curb, tires tearing through the Easter egg-strewn grass. Mickese, perhaps not believing she would actually hit him, had only seconds to react. He backed up toward the house, but not quickly enough. The car's front end struck him with enough force to push him against the exterior wall of his own home. But Jackson didn't stop there. According to multiple witnesses, she continued pressing the accelerator, the engine revving loudly as the tires spun in the soft spring soil. Mickese was completely pinned, the crushing pressure of the vehicle against his body causing catastrophic internal injuries. His screams cut through the chaos of moment. Children who had been laughing and playing just hours before now watched in horror as their father was literally crushed before their eyes. Most devastating of all, police reports indicate that at least one child was inside the vehicle with Jackson during the attack, while others watched from just feet away. Family members rushed to the car, desperately trying to get Jackson to stop. One man broke the driver's side window to reach the keys. Others tried to push the vehicle back, but the damage was already done. By the time they managed to pull Jackson from behind the wheel and shut off the engine, Mickese was unresponsive. First responders arrived within minutes of the 911 call. Paramedics worked frantically to save Mickese, but the injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead at the scene, his body still pinned between the vehicle and his home. The medical examiner would later confirm what witnesses already knew. Mickese Bostic died from massive trauma to his chest and abdomen, consistent with being crushed between two hard surfaces. His death was not instantaneous, a detail that makes the crime all the more horrific.
A deadly act of rage between a mother and father unfolded with their children possibly in the back seat. Birmingham police say they responded to a chaotic scene on Lisa Lane around 9:50 Easter Sunday night. It was initially 4 shots being fired, but while en route, officers received an update.
Officers were updated that a female was trying to run over a male in a vehicle.
Investigators found 27-year-old Mickese James Bostic pinned between a vehicle and a house where a birthday party and Easter celebration had taken place.
The female suspect did in fact run over the male. He was trapped between the vehicle and a house.
Investigators say the incident stemmed from a domestic argument between Bostic and a woman he shares children with. A large crowd, including family members and children, witnessed the incident. It got so chaotic, Birmingham police had to call a max emergency for all officers to respond to the scene.
There's a large commotion. Family members were visibly upset because their loved one was just hit, and officers could not get the scene under control with East Precinct officers.
Under Alabama law, this deadly incident could mean serious charges if intent is determined.
Because those kids were there, this can now be a capital murder case. Because anytime in Alabama when there's a child that the couple shares in common that's under the age of 14, you now could be looking at capital murder.
Shatice Jackson was already restrained by family members when police arrived. Officers noted in their initial report that she offered no resistance when formally taken into custody. More striking was her demeanor, described by multiple officers as eerily calm given the circumstances. While being placed in the patrol car, Jackson reportedly asked an officer for a cigarette and inquired about who would be watching her children, but showed no visible distress about Bostic's condition. The investigation began immediately, with detectives separating witnesses to obtain independent accounts. The consistency of these statements painted a clear picture. Following an argument that had escalated to gunfire inside the home, Jackson had deliberately driven her vehicle at Bostic, pinning him against the house and continuing to accelerate even after impact. Evidence collection teams documented the scene meticulously. They photographed the tire tracks showing the vehicle's path from the street across the yard to the point of impact. Inside the home, they recovered a firearm and documented a bullet hole in the bedroom ceiling, corroborating witness accounts of the earlier gunfire. The vehicle itself became a key piece of evidence, with forensic teams examining it for blood evidence, fingerprints, and mechanical condition. Particularly damning was the testimony from family members who had witnessed Jackson's facial expression and deliberate actions. One witness described her as having a look of pure determination as she accelerated toward Bostic. Another noted that she had maintained pressure on the accelerator even after impact, the engine revving as the tires spun in the grass. The presence of children at the scene, particularly the fact that at least one child was reportedly inside the vehicle during the attack, significantly impacted the charges. Within hours, investigators had consulted with the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office, which made the decision to charge Jackson with capital murder. Jackson was transported to the Jefferson County Jail and booked on capital murder charges. Her initial court appearance was scheduled for the following morning, where she would be formally charged and bail would be addressed, though in capital cases, bail is rarely granted. As the investigation continued through the night, detectives interviewed additional witnesses, processed evidence from the scene, and began constructing a timeline of events. The case against Jackson was building rapidly, with physical evidence, multiple eyewitness accounts, and the circumstances of the crime all pointing toward a deliberate act rather than an accident or moment of temporary insanity. By morning, the story had reached local news outlets. The shocking nature of the crime, a mother allegedly killing her children's father on Easter Sunday, with the children present, ensured that the case would receive significant media attention in the days to come. The Jefferson County Courthouse fell silent as Shatice Jackson entered for her initial appearance. Less than 48 hours after allegedly killing Mickese Bostic, the mother of 5 appeared before Judge Raymond Williams for her arraignment on capital murder charges. What happened next stunned everyone present. As the charges were read, capital murder with the aggravating factor of a child under 14 being present, Jackson displayed no visible distress. Instead, she stood with perfect posture, occasionally glancing around the courtroom with what observers described as casual interest. When asked if she understood the charges against her, she responded with a clear, unwavering, "Yes, Your Honor." But it was her facial expression that dominated news headlines the following day. As the prosecutor described the allegations that she had deliberately used her vehicle to crush Bostic against his home while children watched, Jackson's lips curled into what multiple courtroom observers characterized as a smirk. The expression remained as the judge explained that she faced either life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty if convicted. When Judge Williams asked about legal representation, Jackson appeared almost confident, informing him that her mother had already secured an attorney. She requested a follow-up appearance to allow her counsel to file the necessary documents, speaking with the composure of someone discussing a minor traffic violation rather than a capital murder charge.
I hadn't seen any victims in his family's here, so I'll be
She has 2 traffic.
Family members of Mickese Bostic, seated in the gallery, reacted with audible gasps and muffled sobs at Jackson's demeanor. Brenda Frazier, Bostic's aunt, later told reporters outside the courthouse she showed no remorse. None. Like she was proud of what she did to Mickese. How do you smile when you've killed your children's father? How do you look that way when you've destroyed your own family? Dr. Elaine Cartwright, a forensic psychologist not involved in the case, but who has evaluated numerous homicide defendants, offered perspective on Jackson's courtroom behavior in a local news interview. While we can't diagnose someone we haven't evaluated, this type of affect incongruence, emotional responses that don't match the gravity of the situation, can stem from several sources. It might indicate shock, dissociation, certain personality disorders, or even a strategic attempt to appear in control. What's most concerning is when it suggests a lack of empathy or remorse, which can factor into legal proceedings. Legal experts quickly weighed in on how Jackson's courtroom demeanor might affect her case. Criminal defense attorney Marcus Bennett explained, "Jury perception is everything in a capital case. If this behavior continues during trial, it could be devastating to her defense. Jurors expect to see appropriate emotional responses, remorse, distress, even fear. When they see something that appears to be indifference or worse, satisfaction, it can heavily influence their decision-making." Former prosecutor Vanessa Reynolds added, "The defense will likely seek psychological evaluations. They may argue diminished capacity or explore whether medication is affecting her emotional presentation. But the prosecution will certainly highlight this behavior as evidence of callousness and lack of remorse, factors that can influence both conviction and sentencing." As Jackson was led from the courtroom, she maintained the same composed demeanor, making eye contact with several of Bostic's family members. One relative later described it as looking right through us, like we weren't even human to her. The judge scheduled a follow-up hearing for the following week, allowing time for Jackson's attorney to formally enter the case. As she was escorted back to the county jail, media cameras captured what would become the defining image of the case: Jackson walking with her head held high, the hint of a smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. Court officials later confirmed that Jackson had been evaluated by jail medical staff and was not on any medication that might explain her unusual effect. This detail only deepened the mystery of her behavior and intensified public reaction to the case, with social media exploding in discussions about what could drive a mother to not only kill her children's father, but to appear unmoved, perhaps even pleased, by her actions. In the aftermath of Mickese Bostic's death, the 5 children who once called him father faced a devastating new reality. Overnight, they lost both parents, one to death and one to incarceration, and witnessed violence that no child should ever see. The children, ranging in age from 4 to 12, were initially placed in emergency care by Child Protective Services immediately following the incident. Within days, Bostic's sister and her husband stepped forward to take custody of all 5 children, determined to keep the siblings together despite the sudden financial and emotional burden. "These kids have lost everything," Bostic's sister told local reporters. "The least we can do is make sure they don't lose each other too." The family converted their living room into a bedroom and enrolled the school-age children in counseling services immediately. Child trauma specialists working with the children reported concerning symptoms. The oldest child, whose birthday party had been interrupted by violence, had stopped speaking entirely for the first week. 2 others experienced severe nightmares and refused to ride in cars. The youngest, who had reportedly been inside the vehicle during the incident, showed regression in previously mastered developmental skills. Dr. James Harrington, a child psychiatrist consulting on the case, explained the profound impact of witnessing parental homicide. "These children experience what we call complex trauma. Not only did they lose both parents in different ways, but they witnessed extreme violence committed by one parent against the other. The developmental and psychological implications can be lifelong without proper intervention." The Birmingham community rallied around the children. A local church established a fund to help with their immediate needs. School counselors worked with teachers to create supportive classroom environments. A children's advocacy center offered specialized trauma therapy at no cost to the family. Despite these supports, the road ahead remains daunting. The children face years of therapy, potential court appearances, and the eventual challenge of processing their mother's role in their father's death. As one family member put it, "We can give them love, stability, and professional help, but we can't erase what they saw. That's the tragedy they'll carry forever." The tragedy of Mickese Bostic's death represents more than just one family's nightmare. It highlights the lethal potential of domestic violence and the critical importance of recognizing warning signs before violence escalates to homicide. Experts in domestic violence prevention point to several red flags that often precede lethal incidents. Dr. Amara Wilson, director of the Family Safety Center in Birmingham, explains escalating arguments, previous threats, access to weapons, controlling behavior, and sudden mood changes can all signal increasing danger. In Bostic's case, the argument that began indoors with gunfire showed a clear escalation pattern before the fatal vehicle attack. Research shows that domestic homicides rarely occur without warning. A study by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence found that 72% of murder-suicides involve an intimate partner, and 94% of the victims are female. While Bostic's case represents a less common scenario with a male victim, the pattern of escalation follows similar trajectories. For those experiencing domestic violence, resources exist but remain underutilized. Every state operates a domestic violence hotline offering confidential support, safety planning, and shelter information. Legal advocates can help secure protective orders, while specialized counselors provide emotional support for both adults and children caught in violent households. The most dangerous time for a victim is when they attempt to leave, explains former police detective Marcus Johnson, who now trains law enforcement in domestic violence response. That's why professional support during separation is critical. Safety planning can mean the difference between life and death. Communities play a vital role in prevention. Neighbors who hear arguments, family members who notice concerning behavior, and friends who observe relationship changes can all intervene before violence escalates. This doesn't mean direct confrontation. It can be as simple as checking in, providing resource information, or reporting concerns to authorities. Schools, workplaces, and healthcare settings represent crucial intervention points. When professionals in these settings receive proper training, they can identify warning signs and connect families with appropriate resources. After Bostic's death, Jefferson County expanded its domestic violence training program for all county employees, acknowledging that earlier intervention might have prevented tragedy. Prevention strategies that have proven effective include early education about healthy relationships, batterer intervention programs, coordinated community responses, and specialized domestic violence courts. These approaches address both immediate safety concerns and long-term behavioral change. The most powerful message from Mickese Bostic's story is that domestic homicide is often preventable. By recognizing warning signs, utilizing available resources, and creating communities that take domestic violence seriously, similar tragedies can be averted, saving lives and protecting children from the trauma of witnessing violence between parents. What began as an Easter Sunday celebration ended as a tragedy that forever altered the lives of 5 children and 2 extended families. Mickese Bostic, a 27-year-old father and county employee, lost his life in an act of violence that transformed a family gathering into a crime scene. Shatice Jackson now faces capital murder charges, her apparent lack of remorse adding another disturbing layer to an already horrific case. The ripple effects extend far beyond the immediate family. Colleagues at Jefferson County lost a dedicated worker. The juvenile court system lost someone who made a difference in young lives. 5 children lost their foundation and witnessed trauma that will shape their development for years to come. And a community was forced to confront the reality that domestic violence can escalate to homicide with devastating speed. Bostic's story is not unique. Each year, thousands of lives are lost to domestic violence in America. Each death represents not just the loss of an individual, but the shattering of families and the traumatization of children who witness violence between parents. In the months following Bostic's death, his colleagues established a memorial scholarship in his name, awarded annually to a graduate of the juvenile court system who demonstrates resilience and commitment to positive change, qualities that Bostic himself embodied. His family holds annual Remembers gatherings, focusing not on how he died, but on how he lived, as a dedicated father, reliable worker, and one of the few good men left. This tragedy could have been prevented. Every like, share, and subscription to Crime Scene Exposed helps bring these critical stories to light. Together, we can break the silence surrounding domestic violence and potentially save lives. Hit that subscribe button now to join our community committed to exposing truth and preventing future tragedies. What warning signs do you think are most often missed? Share your thoughts below. Your comment could be the insight that helps someone recognize danger before it's too late.